open. But this is an exciting workshop. The city of New Orleans has a great deal of music. We just don't have enough people supporting that music and our musicians. And that's one of the things that we're going to talk about tonight. So I'm with NOLA Business Alliance, New Orleans Business Alliance. What we do is work with businesses, either grow them here or bring them in from other cities, try to expand them here. I work with musicians. My job is to make you all rich. That's what my job is. Now, there's a small thing called talent. You gotta have two, probably. But most musicians in this city play a gig, they get paid to go home. The last time we had a sync-up, we had Big Frida here. And she said, I don't know about you, but I like making money in my sleep. I like walking out to a mailbox and picking up a check. And that's the type of thing we're going to talk about here, is if you don't have your music ready to be purchased. Let's say, and this isn't unusual, NCI's New Orleans shoots here 9 months a year. That music supervisor who buys all the music goes out everywhere looking for talent. So let's say he hears one of your songs, maybe at a club, maybe he hears it on Spotify, whatever. And he calls you and says, you know what, I want to put that in the next episode. I need your split sheet, your contract, I need your PRO, I need your copyright registration. If you don't have them, you're going to hear click. Because he'll go to someone else who does. You got to have it before he asks, or she asks. Spike Lee's here all the time. He listens to music. Are you prepared for him to call you and have your song that he wants wrapped up, buttoned up, ready to go, that he can buy without worrying about being sued by someone because you don't have the paperwork right? That's what it's all about. And that's the first step. Last year, we had 51 movies and TV shows shot in New Orleans. Those were budgets over $300,000. We had another 119 commercials, videos, or small parts. The Green Card, or the Green Book was shot here. We have film, well, as you know, you try to go up and down the street, there's the trucks. We have film crews here all the time. So that's why getting this panel here, people who understand the business, who hopefully will motivate you to do the work it takes to get your paperwork done properly so you're ready to get rich, because that's what it takes. One quick thing, we did have a substitution. Mia X was sick. She's had health problems. Send prayers out to her because it took a couple of weeks, I think. But we have brought in the brilliant Nesby Phipps. And if probably you just asked him, he told me he was. So that's why we're here. That's what we want to do for y'all. I'm going to introduce first, where is Lisa Alexis, who has a really kind of anybody heard of Essence? Well, now listen to this.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Lisa. I'm the new director of culture. You are correct. That is the proper presence to me. I'm the director of cultural economy, and we're responsible for producing shows such as Mardi Gras, Essence, and working with all of those organizations. And there's a great opportunity for our local musicians. The New Orleans Tourism and Marketing Corporation, along with and in cooperation with the New Orleans Multicultural Tourism Network, is hosting a music showcase. It is going to be offered to all of our local musicians. It is going to be a contest. And the first phase of it is you must have original work. You send in your original work to the website that I'm going to provide to you. And from there are going to be selections made, and it will go through to May 30th, 2019, which is the Essence Festival NOLA Day. On that day, here at the Jazz Market, there's going to be a contest of the 10 finalists with a panel of judges. The winning band or group will perform at the Super Lounge for Essence Festival. And so I just wanted to share that and pass that along. And the information for that may be found at soulofneworleans.com/music showcase. It is very exciting, and it's another way to have your original music and have that exposure and opportunities made from there. So I just wanted to pass that information along, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you.
McDonough 35. McDonough 35.
McDonough 35.
So I want to bring up DJ Raj Smoove. Seems to know everybody in this room, so there's probably not a huge introduction he needs. He plays throughout New Orleans. He's doing for the Saints, for the Pelicans. He's got radio shows, and also has his own music business that he's running. I want to let him talk just a little bit about that, but he's going to meet and talk to Ashleigh Keaton, who is the lawyer at the Ella Project that will be doing your copyright registration, in which the first 50 who do that, we will pay for. Okay? It's not going to cost you anything to have your music copyrighted. That's the first step. So let me bring up Raj.
How's everybody doing tonight? This afternoon? I want to thank everybody for coming here. I want to thank the Jazz and Heritage Foundation. I want to thank the New Orleans Business Alliance for doing this event. Things like this is what the city needs. Right now there's a very big push to build up the music infrastructure of New Orleans. So it gets away from the live music, which we're always going to have, but we need a music industry. We need people to be able to create music, release music, and get paid off of their music. So things like this are going to help to teach all the artists that are here, and eventually we'll get to everybody out there too for how to monetize all their creative endeavors. So, first up, I'm going to introduce Miss Ashleigh Keaton. She has a wonderful bio. Ashleigh practices intellectual property and entertainment law, and she also works in cultural advocacy and policy. Her work includes representing a large, renowned catalog of New Orleans recordings and compositions, which are regularly licensed for film and television. She has worked with dozens of local hip-hop artists on contracts and rights registration. Ashleigh is also the co-founder of the Ella Project, a nonprofit based in New Orleans that serves Louisiana artists, musicians, cultural bearers with direct legal, business, and advocacy services. Ashleigh is an adjunct professor for Tulane Law School and the University of New Orleans Graduate School in Arts Administration, and she received the Distinguished Teaching Award by Tulane Law Class of 2015. So y'all give it up for Ms. Ashleigh Keaton.
That's all.
Check. So today we're talking about copyright as it relates to music. So what works are subject to copyright for artists?
Well, in the context of this conversation, what you all need to know is that both musical compositions and sound recordings are subject to copyright protection. So when we talk about music, we talk about both sides, and you hear that a lot in industry jargon. So again, that would be your songs and your masters.
Now, with copyrighted music, there are different forms and things that you have to fill out for both sides. Can you talk a little bit about the specific pieces that people need to fill out to copyright the sound recordings and the actual underlying composition?
Sure, and like Bill was saying, for the folks who want to sign up for our legal services, we do offer them on a pro bono basis, and we will help you with your forms. But the Copyright Office has a registration portal online, and that's how we will go about getting your works registered. And I think it's really important to note, and Bill talked about this a little bit, why it's so important to register your works. And I think that there are three really good reasons. And the first one is a little less obvious, and that's that when you register your works, they go directly into a government archive, and that means everything is cataloged and organized, so that it makes it easier for you and your business affiliates, and even your heirs at some point, to identify the assets that you have in your work. And so that's one. And another reason is because you want to be able to protect and enforce your rights. So you can't really sue for copyright infringement unless you have a federal registration. And that's really important because you don't want to have to go to state court. The third reason that Bill alluded to, and that you all will get into more when you're talking, is that businesses that want to license from you want to know that they are getting material that you have the authorization to grant. And that makes it a lot easier for them to license your work. So anything that you can do to make it easier to exploit your work the way you want to and monetize your work in a way that you have the power to negotiate, those are really important. So I can't stress that enough.
At what point do you think it's important for artists to copyright their music?
That's a good question. And this is a question that I answered differently even 6 months ago. Recently, the Supreme Court came down with a ruling that you cannot file a lawsuit in federal court until your copyrights are actually registered. So prior to that ruling, you could file a lawsuit with just after filling out an application and sending it. And when you do that, when you submit an application online, you receive a serial number immediately. And I've filed several lawsuits that that have been adjudicated before the registration is actually granted because it takes them a while. So now I think it's more important to really get the ball rolling and register your works, because in the event someone compromises your rights, you have to wait until you receive that registration to file a lawsuit. And hopefully you don't have to file a lawsuit. But in the event that you want to be able to, you want to be able to have the teeth that it takes, that leverage that it takes to negotiate with a party that might be compromising your rights. Because if someone's stealing from you, they're going to steal from you, and you've got to have something that will scare them into working with you and working it out, and either paying you what's due or what have you. But you can't do anything in court until you get that registration certificate. That being said, if you don't have your works registered, you can go back and register all of your works. I mean, from 10, 20, 30 years ago, if you want. You can do that today. So don't worry about that.
Never too late.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, a little follow-up to that, because I know there's songs that I've worked on for like 1 or 2 years. So again, like at what point in the process, do you need to have the finished product before you copyright it? Can you just have an idea for what the song is going to be? There are also times where the song at one point isn't what the finished version is going to be, where we might add other people to the record and collaborate with somebody else. So in those cases, would we need a separate copyright for the final version, or would they be adding an addendum to the original copyright?
Well, the short answer is, first of all, you have the copyright, which is a bundle of rights. The right to reproduce, distribute, publicly perform, prepare derivative works, and exhibit. You have those rights from the time you finish your work. And you're asking, when is that, when should we register it? Should we register when it's raw, or when it's, mixed and mastered? I think it's best practices. I mean, look, let me answer it this way. If you are in the recording studio and you have finished your work and you're getting it mixed and mastered within the next couple of months, wait and do it then. But if there's a long transition between the work that you have that's finished and then the final work, then I would register it when it's complete, because you have the final version is just going to be a dressed up version of your work. It doesn't mean that that the underlying work that you have will be in any way, shape, or form compromised, because you will have that registration. Now, if you're adding layers onto your work later in the studio, and new beats and what have you, then I would wait and register then. But you can always register, any revisions that you've done later. But I wouldn't hold up the registration process if there's going to be a long time between mixing and mastering, especially with the new rules. And my answer, like I said, I was telling my business partner this morning, I was afraid you were going to ask me that, because my answer would have been completely different 3 weeks ago. When the Supreme Court ruling came down, I mean, it's a big deal. And I don't think, a lot of people aren't aware of it, and it changed the answer to a lot of these questions.
So with this ruling, when I was younger, I used to always hear my parents talk about the poor man's copyright, where you can put a copy of your song and mail it to yourself, and as long as you don't open it, that can be used to prove that this song was yours before it was anybody else's. Is that out the window now?
Yeah, I don't know who started that myth, but I'd like to find them.
Fake news.
Real fake news. Also, a waste of time. For those of you, unless you all really enjoy standing in line at the post office, but that's all you get.
Are there any other big myths or misconceptions that you get asked about from artists when they come to work with you for copyright?
Yes, but I think that the biggest problem, or the biggest challenge that I see, is that musicians are just not, they're just not availing themselves of some of the services that are required. When I say services, I mean like registering with the performance rights organizations, and there's several. There's a couple of different types, and dealing with your copyright administration. Some of these services are actually free, right? And then some of them don't cost that much. I think that there's a misconception that it does. And I would highly encourage you all to, sit down with me or someone else who has experience in that regard, and to really work through your catalog so that you are maximizing your potential economic gain from your work. And it doesn't cost that much. I guess that's the misperception, that it costs a whole lot to get your catalog in order, and it just doesn't. So it just takes some organizing. It's like spring cleaning. So it's not fun, but once you get in the habit of doing it, it's easy. And then you don't have all that volume to deal with.
About how long does the whole process take?
Well, the registration process, actually registering a copyright doesn't take long at all. If you sit down with me, we can get it done in less than an hour. I say applying for the registration. The Copyright Office is only a year or two backlog for the registration. That's why it's important to go ahead and register your works if you can, because again, if you put your work out there and someone infringes upon it and you're waiting for this registration to come to you in the mail, that can be a while. So I would go ahead, I think it's much more imminent that you register your works now. And that's something that I hate to say, but it's changed in the past month. To register with the performance rights organizations, it doesn't take long. What takes the longest is organizing your catalog. And that's the most important thing that you can start doing, is organizing your catalog. And by that, I mean literally making a list of all of your songs and or recordings, notating whether you're the writer, whether you're sharing, whether you shared authorship with someone else, what the splits are, and then, noting whether or not you own the recordings, or whether you worked with a recording studio that has ownership, or a label. Just really, if you just create an Excel sheet, and I think we have a sample one in the folder that Sound Exchange has published online, and just go through and organize your catalog, then it's just a matter of inputting it into the various service platforms that don't cost that much money. Again, it just takes time for you to organize everything.
Now, when you are, say you're trying to copyright your whole catalog and you've worked with multiple different artists, can you fill out the copyright and put all those multiple artists on it per song, or do you have to do it for the whole project? How does that work?
So you can have a single copyright form for a unique combination of authors. So as long as all the authors are the same, or let's say we write a song together, you and I write a song together, and as long as both of us wrote, and we're producing an album, say 10 tracks, as long as both of us co-wrote 10 tracks, then I can register all of those songs on one form. But if I wrote one song by myself and you wrote one song by yourself, I need to separate those out. And I will say that the Copyright Office, just this month also, and this happened, I think it was March 15th, So it was last month, it's been a month, wow. I was sitting at my computer and I was registering someone's copyright. This was following the last sync up, and popped up on the screen giving notice, at the Copyright Office giving notice to customers that the Copyright Office will no longer allow more than 10 unpublished works in one, to be listed on one form. So if you're doing, if you have a catalog and you have more than 10 works that you haven't published from 1 year, you have to start a new form. They will only let you register 10 at once. So that's a new change.
How do they determine that, whether or not it's been published?
That's another good question. And that often depends on the examining attorney. There's a lot of literature out there, but publication, in terms of the Copyright Office's definition, means releasing it online, releasing it, in a brick and mortar store, releasing it online. And, there was a question at one point. I got an email from an examining attorney about a year ago who told me that my client hadn't published his work because it was just on YouTube. And I went, well, YouTube, are you serious? I mean, YouTube is where everyone's putting their music. So YouTube is publication, but that's why I said it depends on who you ask. But if it's available to the public, if you're making it available to the public, that means it's published. But if you're just, if you've shared it with a few friends at home, or, not made it widely available, not announced it, then it's not going to be considered published.
Now, talking about publishing, I know a lot of times when I worked on material with people, we've cleared the songs through BMI before we even dealt with the copyright side of it.
And that's how I would have advised people to do it. I mean, that's how, that was a smart thing to do, because music supervisors and other licensors they're going to go to BMI or ASCAP, BMI or ASCAP first, to make sure that you have your songs registered. That's just the custom. It's not a law, it's just custom and practice. And so that's really important to do. It's still very important to do, but now it's important to register your copyrights when you're doing that because of this new ruling.
So you said it's a year or two backlog on getting...
I think they're trying to revamp. I think part of this effort, if you will, which, I mean, I kind of had an out-of-body experience this morning, because I got another ruling from the Copyright Office on how you can organize collections and compilations, which I'm not going to get into right now. But I mean, they're just increasing their fees, right? So they just need money to fund their operations or what have you. And I'm not going to try to justify it, but that's all this amounts to. And so because of that, they're changing these procedures, and it's something that you just need to pay attention to.
So once you apply for your copyright, even though you haven't gotten back, do they furnish you with some type of number, or saying you're in line, a case number or something?
You immediately get a serial number, so that's great, because you can keep track of the registration process. And again, you have rights from the time you finish completing your work. You just can't file a lawsuit in federal court, which means that you don't have the teeth, you don't have the leverage that you need to resolve a dispute.
Because my next question is getting to, say you meet a music supervisor and they want to use your song in a TV show that they're filming in New Orleans. You filled out your copyright, submitted it, but you haven't gotten it back yet. What do these music supervisors need from the artists or from the writers to prove that this is their song in order to feel comfortable to cut a check?
Well, I think that the music supervisors are more interested in your works being registered with the performance rights organizations. So it's my experience that, like when HBO was here, for instance, I spent like a good year setting up songwriter accounts and publisher accounts, BMI and ASCAP, because that company would not license from a musician without them being registered with one of those organizations. They didn't require, a demonstration that your songs were registered with the Copyright Office. And I think that most music supervisors will not require that. That practice may change with the new laws or the interpretation of the existing laws, new interpretation. But right now, I think it's most important, you know, for a music supervisor to see that you're registered with BMI or ASCAP, because it's part of their due diligence, and it covers their ass. So, and again, that's the third reason that I suggested you should get your works registered.
Are there any artists here who aren't signed up with BMI, ASCAP, or Publishing Rights Organization? 1, 2, 3. As soon as you leave, go online, BMI.com or ASCAP.com. It's not that difficult. Sign up. That is how you get your mailbox money. And your CSAC also. That's how you get your royalties. So we want to thank Ashleigh Keaton for coming and sharing this wonderful knowledge. We got a question for the one and only Chasing Cash.
Could you please ballpark a number for us, for the people who want to copyright their first song? Because I think that's very, very important right now. I'm not saying that it's inexpensive or it don't cost that much, but coming from a creative world, me being an artist myself, it's hard as fuck to get a mic.
Right.
So,
$35
right now? Yeah, $35.
No, it's 50. Well, it's 55. It's 55 unless, well, if you have one work by one author, so if you have a sound recording and you're not claiming the musical composition, then you could do the $35 for a single work. But if you have a sound recording where you're claiming that you're the songwriter as well, then that's 2 works that you're registering, even though it's 1 copyright registration.
But if
Because
you
you're
wrote
claiming
everything, that would cover the whole
lyrics.
project.
What now?
But if you wrote everything and you were the only songwriter, that would
You wrote
be able to
everything
cover the whole
and
project.
you're recording it, and you're registering the composition and the sound recording, so that's $55. And you're lucky because NOLA VA is going to pay for those fees if you sign up today. And I'll cover, if you qualify for pro bono services, which most people do, and you will for sure, in connection with the workshop today, then I can help set that up so that you don't have to pay a lawyer to do that. And so you're looking at, for your first copyright filing, if you're here today, $0, but after that it's going to be $55. Like I said, you can register more than 1 song. You just have to do it properly, and there are certain limitations, but you can register. And if they're published works, you can register as many as you want right now. So that's good news.
Well, make sure you meet Ashleigh and the other project out here in the hallway. We're going to take a brief intermission, and then we'll be back with our main panel.
Thank you.